Good afternoon. Hi, 10 George Realty. Thank you for attending. This session, we're going to be going over agency, showing properties and the requirement of the BRBC. So I'll start sharing my screen now. Okay, so let me get myself situated here so I can see. So we'll go over first the agency representation. Whenever we're training and I'm researching too, I'm learning right alongside you. So I think these sessions are good for us for refreshers. And also we pick up a couple more tips, which I did in my research. So agency representation, the disclosures. So what they're recommending is that you provide the agency disclosure ahead of the contract or listing signing. Why is that? Because that outlines the duties of the agents ahead of time to the prospective client. So when you ask a buyer, which is required by law to sign a buyer broker agreement, that agency disclosure is already pre-attached to it. It populates with it, as does an offer and all of that. But what the attorneys are recommending is give it to them ahead of time. You can pre-mail it, email it to them, along with whatever contract you have, just so that they have the chance to review the form, okay? And of course, any other documents. I always think it's a good idea to give it to them ahead of time and tell them, here's the documents, we'll discuss them in further detail upon my arrival. Even if you're not putting in a commission rate until you see them, go ahead and provide the documents so they have a chance to review them, okay? So
After they do the AD, right?
yeah, well, you can provide the contract and the AD all together. What the attorneys recommend is giving people a chance to actually read the agency disclosure so they understand the differences between representing a seller, a buyer, or a dual agent. So which rides us right into the next subject. What is a dual agent? Okay, so anytime an agent represents both the buyer and seller or tenant and property owner in a transaction, the agent is dual, which we all normally know that. And furthermore, if the agent works at the same brokerage as the listing or selling agent, then both agents are dual under that broker. Even if that brokerage was split into two different offices and not located together, as long as they're under the same brokerage, you would still be dual. So there's certain things, and this is right on the disclosure for the agency. So a dual agent may not relate facts to the other party which pertain to financial positioning of either party, motivations for buying or selling. Oh, hey, they got to get out of here because XYZ. You cannot say that unless the other party has expressly given you permission to say things like that. They can't relate bargaining position, how low or how high will they go, and other personal information that may impact price, such as mentioning that the seller will accept a price less than what the property is listed for, or that the buyer will provide a greater price than the first offer. So if you are talking like that, you need the express written permission of the other party before you talk like that. So if you don't have that permission, please do not disclose those positions. Okay. So they even went as far as to say, let's say the seller in an emergency lets the agent know, hey, now I have an emergency, I need to sell immediately. Please don't disclose that either to any other parties unless you have written permission. Okay. Why do we have an agency form? Well, the agency form is not stating when you give just an agency who's representing who. It rather is explaining the duties of each agent. Agent being the sellers, the buyers, or dual agency, or tenant or property owner. Okay. So for instance, some sellers, and I have dealt with this, may only want you to represent them. And I've done that most recently 2 times. because the seller's like, I want you as my agent, and I stayed on just the seller's side. Okay. So there are some sellers that are very particular about that. One of them happened to work in a law firm and they were very explicit. I do not want you representing both sides. Okay.
They come out and ask you, Michelle, or you ask them when you're signing the listing?
In that case, because I knew them very well and I knew, their work background and how they are, I said, I'll just represent you. You don't want me to be dual correct. And they're like, correct, please don't. So I already knew that about them. So it was no shock. Yeah. So I just attached the agency, and you'll see here, it's just explaining the seller's agent, buyer's agent, an agent representing both the buyer and seller, and the seller and buyer responsibilities to do their due diligence as well. And then everybody has to sign it. They've also attached the civil code in more detail. Okay. Here. And then the CCPA always attaches to the agency. Yeah. So we were going to address the BRBC, not going over the form, but why we require it, because it's California law as of January 1, 2025. And it is California law AB 2992. Okay. So for the buyers, it's a mandatory written agreement, which CAR has made, which is a BRBC. Compensation disclosure required. How much are you requesting to be compensated, which is they've taken care of on the form. The timeline restrictions is on the CAR form, no longer than 3 months if it's not an LLC or corporation. And when you are counting the 3 months, don't just go 333, because some months have 31 days, and the attorneys, the last training I was in, said you could be over 2 days on your days because of those extra days. So make sure you're physically counting and making sure you're not going over the 90. Yeah, so that's one thing. See, I pick up
90 business days.
No, 90 days, calendar days.
Calendar.
So you could, if you just take 3 months and a couple of those were 31 days, you could be over the 90. We don't want to do that because that could be an issue. So just make sure that you're counting the days and not going over the 90. Okay, agents are required, agent duties to disclose all material facts on property value, and they act as a fiduciary to the buyer, which we all know that. And then there's also a non-exclusive versus exclusive. The agreement can be exclusive as long as we've checked the box and signed in, I believe, the paragraph in the back, I forgot the number. And there's a non-exclusive, okay? So the important notes for buyer compensation sources: while the buyers are technically financially responsible unless you check that box on the BRBC, the compensation can also come from a seller concession, which we know, which can then reduce the amount the buyer owes. Okay, or don't sign multiple agreements. Signing multiple buyer broker agreements can create some conflict and overlapping payment obligations. So if your buyer tells you they're already under a buyer broker agreement, be very cautious. Make sure you understand what that buyer broker agreement says. Okay. So this is right out of the DRE. This is not my stuff. This is the Department of Real Estate practices that licensees should avoid on the buyer broker representation agreements. Number one, and we have to explain this over and over to people, failing to provide that written agreement. It's not, but I know, Uncle John, he's my family. No, we still need it. So please make sure that you're doing this prior to contract. Make sure it is the law. We will be asking for you. Not clarifying the compensation expectations. So you need to explain how I do. Like you put 3% on your buyer broker agreement. If you didn't check that box, then whatever the seller agrees that they'll pay, deducts, like if the seller says, I'll pay you 2%, the buyer would owe the remaining 1%. But you need to explain all the scenarios to the buyer so they understand it. So that's another item from DRE that you're not clarifying that compensation expectation and how it works and how that you would be negotiating on the buyer's behalf to get the seller, to negotiate with the seller's agent for commission. Misrepresenting commission terms. We can never say that there's a standard rate or standard industry rate or a standard area rate, nothing, because there's not. It's all negotiable. Not disclosing dual agency. If you know the buyer doesn't understand that you're representing the buyer and seller or tenant and property owner, make sure you tell them. And sometimes what we used to do in the past, in the really old days, we would circle the dual agency. We would actually circle it and say, we're representing both, and we would circle that. And so we're a dual agent. Okay. So that is what we used to do to try to protect ourselves in the past. So make sure that people understand if you are a dual agency, because just because you give them the form, they may not understand because you have to tell them. That form's not stipulating who you're representing. It's just explaining the duties. Pressuring the buyer to sign, we don't do that anyway. So, but that's one of the DRE's warnings. And requesting advance fees from a buyer or seller. There is a way to do it. Our brokerage does not allow it, but we would have to have all kinds of forms filed with the DRE and able to do that. And we do not do that because it becomes a nightmare of accounting and we're not holding funds. So we do not allow any request for advance fees whatsoever from a buyer, seller, or the brokerage.
So you don't.
No. Only if we filed and got approval from the DRE, and we do not have approval.
You're supposed to get the advance fee for services that you have not performed.
Yeah,
Only the attorney can do that.
right. And the only way that it's allowed is if he went through tons of paperwork to get it approved. We do not do that. So don't ask ever for any advance fees from anybody, because like as he said, you have to be an attorney. Okay.
Another box that you should be very aware of is on the PRPC is the box where the buyer said that they are financially unable to pay the commission.
Yeah.
That box is very important. Okay, so
Yeah.
if they check the box, then that means the buyer is not liable for any of the commissions that they promise you.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times, so I remember that.
Yeah.
And
so,
here's the box that Peter's referring to on the BRBC. It's G2. Okay. So if that box is checked, the buyer has no obligation to pay G2 on the BRBC.
Buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay bill.
So what would happen in that case, and you can see this example, we've put 3% in. If the seller only agrees to pay 2%, then the other percent, the buyer does not have to pay it. Okay, because that box is checked. Now, if that box was not checked, then they would be responsible for the 1%. Okay.
Very important.
Yeah.
One good way to screw yourself and your buyer over.
Right? We lose the whole deal.
Yeah. Go ahead, Oscar.
Yes, I have a quick question on the 90 days. So what you're saying is like, if you're gonna put the start date and then you start counting all the way to 90 days and you put the date when the 90 days is gonna be over?
Yes, and the only thing the attorney said was that some people are just taking 3 months, right? They're going January, February, March, but in some instances, some months may have 31 days. So even you're taking 3 months, you may be over the 90. So just do a count and make sure you're not going over 90. Because they said that was an issue a couple of times. So just make sure that you're not going over the 90 days, including all days.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. So I want to go over this form because we're going to go into showing properties next, a list of some items about showing property. And you can check this form. There is a check mark on your buyer broker agreement. And you can check this form. I never do because I'm hopeful that you already have all the answers to this and you've interviewed your client. But if you want a cheat sheet and you want to check this form into your BRBC, this is great. So it goes over what's the price range they're looking for, what property types, property use. Is it a second home, a primary residence, the relative, personal use, income producing. So this form will trigger you to ask a lot of questions, and it's a very good form actually. Minimum bedrooms and baths. It's going to even go as far as, do they want solar? What school district are they in? Are there any accessibility features of the property? So I think that this form and the location is a good starting point. You should always interview your buyer so you know how to look on the MLS and what you're looking for. I know Jimmy just went out and interviewed a buyer at a coffee shop and went over everything that that buyer is looking for so that he could get his BRBC signed and that he understood what her expectations of property were. Now, can people change? Sure. But this is a really good starting place so that you know what people want or what you should be looking for. Okay. So finally, we're going to look at showing properties. Uh-oh. What happened? Okay, so showing properties, I am going to stop the share because this one I don't really need the list. So when you're going to be showing properties, first you're going to have your executed BRBC, correct? Because you want to protect yourself and make sure that you're going to be paid. Then you're going to call the other agent. You're going to search the MLS for the preferences of that client and within their price range. And you're going to call on the properties that you see that the client may like. You're going to call the other agent. I know agents don't like us calling for availability, but I just did it and I will always do it because sometimes they're already entertaining an offer and they're almost ready to wrap it up. So I always want to call first. So I call, and then at that point you could say, is the seller allowing for any concessions? They know what you're talking about. They know that we're asking, hey, are we able to be paid? Sometimes they'll tell you just submit the best you can and put it on your offer, which of course we do. And sometimes they'll tell you, but I always will ask, but you can still just put it in your offer. If you have a BRBC, for instance, at 3%, do not ask for over 3% because the seller can check you. They can ask for the page of the BRBC that shows what you had written on the BRBC and that it's valid. So
It's gotta be below.
it's got to either be lower, but never can be higher. No matter,
3% or lower, but not higher.
you can't go higher.
Put any BRBC.
Yeah, and you can't collect because people were getting confused. Okay, so I can get 2% from the seller and then I can get 3% from the buyer. It doesn't work that way. It's a combined total of only 3%. Okay. So you're going to call the other agent, make sure you know where the lockbox is in, make sure you have your lockbox key working and that you know how to operate it. I would say drive over there and meet the clients. I'm not one anymore in these days. I normally don't put people in my car anymore. I will meet them there. I'm happy to follow them around town if I have to. If it doesn't bother them, it doesn't bother me. It depends on your client. Meet them there, but get there early. Make sure that your key's working. Get in the house, set the stage, turn the lights on. If it's too dark and you can open some curtains, open those. Just look around and make sure that when they walk in, it looks, inviting, right? Because we're salespeople. We want it to look as nice as possible. Make sure you know how to walk them around. Make sure you know how to get into the backyard, the garage, etc. If you get there early and you can't figure out because maybe the garage is separate, but you don't see a key to get in, you still have time to call the listing agent. So that's why I recommend getting there early ahead of your buyer and then walk them around. I had somebody ask, and I thought it was a great question, a new agent, how close should I stay to the buyer when they're walking around in a property? Well, if we lockbox them in, stay with them. I would say let them lead. Don't like breathe down their neck, but let them lead, but just kind of follow along, with them and answer any questions you can. Like, for instance, before you got to the appointment, you may want to run some quick comps of the neighborhood and have those on hand so that you look like you're ready to do business. So that should only take you 10 minutes. You can run those comps fairly quick. Anything that you know about the property, because the MLS gave you the detail, there's a newer HVAC or roof or whatever, make sure you're letting them know. And if they're going to keep the appliances, if they've offered the refrigerator to stay, things like that you know about, make sure you're letting your buyer know to make it more attractive for them. But get there early, let them lead you. If you don't feel safe or you don't know the people very well, and you just want to have somebody make an arrangement with one of your colleagues to meet you there and to stand out front or whatever you want them to do. You could have a colleague meet you there. Sometimes I will take one of my male colleagues here if I'm particularly don't know somebody and I'm going into a warehouse. I always bring him, because if I know him, no problem. If I don't know him and it's a call in, I bring him with me. So just make sure that you're exercising good safety for yourself. If you have nobody to go with you, let the office know where you're going. We'll check on you, but always be mindful of safety. We did have an incident where recently where a buyer wasn't being monitored. It was not our agent, and there was some rifling through people's personal belongings that were seen. So that's why I say you don't have to be on top and breathing. And no, most buyers wouldn't do that. I would say 99.9%. But just, be mindful that it's somebody else's house and that you're with your buyer. So that is what I have to say about showing property.
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
So when they call and say, oh, I want to see this property, you have to say, come in to sign a contract first, the BRBC?
I would want to meet them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I go out on the commercial, I'll have the paperwork with me, but I don't want to roll on, specifically big vacant properties unless I have a colleague with me.
Okay.
And I just have learned that just to take somebody, and there's always somebody here that will ride over, and if it's local, they're gonna sit with you. They don't mind. Practice safety.
I know that on the Redfin website,
Mhm.
it gives you an option. It tells you, do you have are you being represented by an agent?
Yeah.
And you click on yes or no. And if you click on no, and then the next one, it'll tell you, would you like to be represented by Redfin? And if you click no, then they'll say, sorry, we can't help you. But if you say yes, they'll send you the BRBC.
Yeah.
And I know, and this was today, because I was looking for one of the properties, and then I was like, okay, let me see if I can.
What it's doing. Yeah.
And right away it says, no, sorry, we can't help you.
So what
So
happened?
you have to sign the bill,
So it came right away
Right
when
away.
you said, oh, okay. So since you mentioned this, so do you have to provide an agency to an unrepresented buyer? No, but what you need to provide is the BNA, which is a buyer non-agency agreement. So we don't have to provide the agency, but we do need to provide that to protect ourselves, and don't start acting like their agent, meaning, you can provide them with the disclosure forms because you are representing the seller and helping them get through it, or vice versa if it's a buyer. But just be careful not to establish agency with the other side. And the most surefire way is to give them that form and then don't act as their agent. Okay. Are there any questions online?
Here or at the house?
Michelle. Oh,
Right away. When they tell you they don't want representation, always have one in your toolkit when you're rolling. Yeah.
what's the name of that farm one more time?
It's called a B&A. It's a car form B&A. It's a buyer non-agency agreement.
Okay.
Because some buyers, and I recommend that if you know that this is the case, don't show them the property, number one. But where these forms really come into play is if you're the listing agent and there's a buyer that says, I don't want you representing me. I don't want any agent representing me. I'm representing myself. You really need this form to protect not only yourself, but the brokerage, so that it's a clear line that we don't represent you. They can go get legal counsel to help them. But if they don't want to have representation from an agent, we need that form and we will require it.
So that form is just to let them know that, okay, since you decided that you don't want to be represented and everything, we just want to get everything, put it on paper that way.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
The car attorneys drafted that I think when the BRBC came out, so that there was no confusion about representation. And there's a whole course on being careful not to establish representation. Don't overly explain the property. That's why they say, if you're not representing them, you can hand them a flyer at an open house, but don't be over explaining anything. Anything on the flyer is fair game, but don't go into other detail. Don't talk about the seller.
Been on the market.
Yeah, all that stuff I don't do. Even prior to BRBC, I was very cautious to be quiet during those kind of questions, right? So, yeah, some of it's common sense, but I think not all of it is. I think it has to do more with experience and being out there and seeing what happens on the field. That's why if you can follow around an agent, that, if you're brand new, if an agent will allow you to follow them, even to see the showings, it is great. It's great education for you. I used to do that. I would follow an agent and say, can I watch your show? I would do that when I was brand new. So I think if you tell an agent, I just want to see how you show and how you walk and talk and what you're doing inside the showing. Most agents would be very flattered that you would ask them, and they'll allow you to watch. Okay. So are there any questions?
Yes, Michelle, when as a listing agent and holding an open house, I know the title company gives me the list, a booklet of people come and they sign form, but I've been using OH&I form.
Yeah, from the car.
From the car?
Yeah, you should be using the car forms because there's specific language on it that the attorneys drafted.
Yeah, so I have when the clients come, and I ask them to sign this form, and then I just tell them, this is just to let you know that I'm representing the seller.
Yes, correct. And
Okay.
you're doing it exactly textbook proper.
Yeah, and then if they don't sign it, then I give them the B&A form.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the correct way to do it, right?
Yeah, and don't, and just answer questions that are on your flyer no more, because you don't want to establish like, oh, I thought she was representing me. So,
Oh, you mean what if they don't sign the OH&I form?
yeah, if they don't
Okay.
want to sign, if they don't want to sign in, number one, this was a big deal when they first started training on that. You don't say, okay, take the cane, get out, It's not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them see the house.
Yeah, but just don't answer
problem.
questions.
Just don't answer questions. You can give them a flyer and,
Okay.
be pleasant like you are anyway, Annie, and then, just let them see it.
Okay.
You'd be surprised if they like you there. Sometimes they're feeling you out to see how you'll treat them. I've heard so many stories of agents here where the person was at an open house and liked the way they were treated by that agent, and then they reach out to them later. So it's a great way to get business.
Okay, so using the OH&I form is the right way to do it instead of having them
books.
sign in the books. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
those books the title companies have had forever, but yeah, I don't use those. I use the car forms that were created by the attorneys.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody
Michelle,
else? Uh-huh.
yes, Michelle, excuse me, what's the form that she's talking about? Which form is that?
It's a sign-in form, Oscar, that's created by Carr. I can send it to you. Let me write myself a note.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can email it.
Send me one too, Michelle.
Okay. Okay, to Oscar, Catherine. So,
Does that same apply for, let's say for someone that has a mixed use? Residential and, commercial for that
Mhm.
BRPC?
yeah. Yeah, because presumably you're asking because you're going to be showing a residential. Yeah, that would still apply. Yeah, because the residential unit would be the one you were selling. Yeah, but remember, we still need a buyer broker agreement, even if it's commercial. I think that because that came on later than residential, some commercial agents didn't realize that, oh, now that's the law too. So remember that if you're dealing in commercial, you also need a buyer broker representation agreement. And you can check the box on the BRBC that says commercial on it. So you can use the same form. Yeah. Any other questions?
Michelle, is it possible that we can go back the previous section? You mentioned about the commission section, about the seller's compensation, the buyer compensation.
Yes. Okay, so you want to go on to the BRBC?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so it populates first with that and then the CCPA. Okay, hang on. This is a fast scroll here. I didn't mean to go that quick. Okay, here we go.
Right, I heard that you indicate 3%, and then if the seller only compensates 2%, meaning the buyer have to pay the difference.
Correct. However, if this box down here is checked that the buyer does not have sufficient funds, then you only can get what the seller will pay you. And at any rate, you must try to get the commission, whether that box is checked or not. So, it's not, I'm gonna get 2 from the seller and 3 from the buyer and, or I'm not even gonna try, I'm just gonna have my buyer pay me. No, you still need to ask on the offer. You've already, you have to try to get the commission from the seller. And it's a negotiating point. If they don't want to, then you go back to the buyer and let them know.
Because commercial, sometimes, let's say if the seller nowadays said, oh, we don't compensate.
Well, AIR has created a buyer broker agreement. Now, theirs is, and I don't have AIR on this particular car account. I have to use Shumay's. But that agreement says I believe it's a box you check. It says that the buyer and broker expect for the seller to pay the compensation. And that's embedded into the AIR. I could highlight that for you and show you, because I was just showing that to somebody else a couple days ago. That is already on the AIR form, but you have to know where to look for it and where to check it. But yeah, it's the same thing. We have to have that, and I'll print it and I'll highlight it. I don't know if any of you online are working AIR. If you are, I can send it to you as well if you're working on AIR contracts, but it is different. And if you are working AIR, please use the AIR buyer broker agreement. Don't mix the forms, because some commercial brokers get a little funny about that. They don't like it. So if you're going AIR, go all the way AIR. Okay. And if you're going car, go all the way car.
Can you send me that too, Michelle? It's me
Yes.
asking. Thank you.
But if you only want to use the AIR forms instead of the data. You can just subscribe for 1 year, for $229, right, Michelle?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very economical because, you know, if you want to be a regular AIR member, you have to pay like 200.
Oh, yeah.
Per month.
Yeah, I did that last year.
Yeah, so but if you just want the forms of the AIR forms, then you have a discount for your book, because you already belong to the subscription,
So you can pay the $200 and just for the form.
yeah, just for the form, then they give you a library of those AIR forms you can always download and use it, and you know, very convenient for you, you know.
And Michelle, I noticed this car has, commission agreement, right?
Yeah.
But AR doesn't have. I noticed that.
Well, AIR, actually, there is a commission agreement, but it's buried at the back of the contract.
Yeah.
It's at the very back, and a lot of agents don't see it because it's very buried. So back there, I always tell people, don't forget that box because you can put your commission in there. And that,
I see that at the bottom.
That-
the
the-
last part.
I think it's, yeah, the last part, there's a box.
No, what I mean is, what about the buyer's compensate, buyer's book? On car, in the past, I've been using commission agreement, using car to substitute. But nowadays, I'm still using it from time to time, but AIR, I noticed that doesn't have a separate, just a commission agreement.
You mean from buyer's broker to seller broker?
No, buyer to pay buyer's.
Well, no, we need to use the buyer broker agreements now.
No, I understand on the car, but AIR.
AIR has it. They have a buyer broker agreement. They dropped it in. It's there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I just went over it a couple days ago with somebody.
Oh.
But I'll print it for you and Oscar, and then I'll highlight where I'm talking about that it says that the broker should, and for
Yeah.
Antonio.
The contract, I saw that all the time. It's there in years. But what I mean is just a separate commission agreement.
Yeah, we have it.
Introduced.
Yeah, we have it.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 I think it's, I don't know how many months old, maybe 5 months. It's fairly new form. I'll send it to you too, Antonio. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, how much is it again if you wanna join the
AIR?
yes.
229, it was 229. I don't know if they've raised a little bit, but it's 229 and it drops into your car.org. And then you toggle switch between the AIR contracts and the car contracts. So it's super easy. You just toggle between whichever set of contracts you want.
And so we have to call car to pay him, or how do we go about that?
Car and
Yeah, you go to car and you just sign up, Oscar. If you're gonna be in, I can help you.
Okay, thank you. Because I did it a while back, but I forgot how I
Yeah,
did.
no problem.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think I have a phone number of somebody that may be able to take up Jackson Boudet, or however you say it, blah, blah. I don't know. It's a French name, but he'll help you. Yeah. I'll find out his number and send it to you. You just call him and pay him.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions before we take ourselves off? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. We'll see you Friday. We'll be going over the commercial car lease agreement, and just a refresher for all of us. So thank you for attending. I always am honored that you spent time with us. So thank you, and have a good rest of your day and week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent training.
Bye-bye.